Do you remember the moment when your emotions suddenly went silent? When you weren't sad, you weren't happy, you just felt nothing at all? That strange emptiness wasn't random, it was psychological. I used to think I was the only one experiencing that quiet shutdown inside my chest, but as I learned more about how the mind works, I realized this wasn't just my story. It was a pattern, a real psychological response that many of us carry without ever knowing its name. Nobody explains how disorienting it feels when your emotional system stops behaving the way it used to. You look at yourself in the mirror and recognize your face, but the connection between your mind and your feelings feels blurred. You laugh because it's socially expected, not because anything inside you stirs. You say, "I'm fine," because the truth is, you don't know what you're supposed to feel anymore, and slowly you start wondering whether you've changed or whether there's something deeper happening beneath the surface. According to research published in the Journal of Traumatic Stress, 2018, this feeling nothing state is not a personality flaw, it is a psychological mechanism called emotional numbness, triggered when your mind becomes overwhelmed for too long. It is the brain's way of protecting itself, a temporary shutdown designed to prevent emotional overload. So the nothingness you feel isn't an absence of emotion. It's the mind pulling a safety brake, whispering, "You've carried too much. Let me turn this down before you collapse." But here's the part people never tell you. When numbness lasts long enough, we begin to mistake it for our identity. We think we've become cold, detached, or broken, but we haven't. Feeling nothing is not who you are, it's what your nervous system is doing to protect you. This isn't just my story, it's the shared psychology of all of us who felt our inner world go silent and wondered why. Today, we're going to explore the psychology behind it and how people who feel nothing can slowly find their way back to feeling again. There's a moment many of us know too well, the moment you realize you're not really feeling anything anymore. Not sadness, not happiness, not excitement, just nothing. It doesn't show up suddenly, it builds slowly, on the days when life asks too much from you, when you keep pushing through responsibilities, stress, and quiet disappointment. Little by little, your mind gets tired of carrying everything, and instead of breaking, it goes quiet, not because you're weak, but because you've been strong for too long without a break. People often misunderstand numbness. They think it means you don't care. But numbness isn't a lack of caring. It's caring so much for so long that your system eventually says, "I need to shut down for a while." It's like running on low battery. You can still show up for work, still talk to people, still smile when you need to, but inside everything feels muted, distant, foggy. You don't feel cold, you feel drained. Psychologists actually understand this response very well. When the brain is overwhelmed for too long, it starts turning down the volume on emotions to help you cope. A study from the University of Toronto found that when people experience emotional overload, the anterior insula, the region that helps us sense our own feelings, reduces its activity. In simple terms, your brain is not malfunctioning. It's protecting you the same way the body numbs pain after a physical shock. It's trying to keep you going. That's why you might still function normally. You can answer messages, get tasks done, talk to people, laugh at jokes. But it feels like you're doing everything from a distance, like watching your life instead of living it. You put on the "I'm fine" version of yourself because it's easier than explaining a feeling you don't fully understand. And because you look fine on the outside, nobody notices the quiet war happening inside you. What makes this harder is the loneliness that comes with numbness. Not the loud kind, but the quiet aunt. The kind where you're surrounded by people but still feel disconnected. You see others feeling deeply, laughing genuinely, caring effortlessly, and a part of you wonders, why can't I feel like that anymore? You might even start thinking something is wrong with you. But numbness is never a personal failure. It's an emotional bruise you carried alone for too long. Maybe your numbness started years ago without you realizing it. Maybe you had to be the strong one. Maybe you learned early that expressing emotions wasn't safe or helpful. Or maybe you've been running at full speed for so long that your mind finally hit its limit. Emotional numbness often comes from everything you didn't have time to process. Stress, heartbreak, pressure, expectations, tiredness you never spoke about. But here's the hopeful part. Numbness isn't permanent. It's your mind taking a break, not giving up. Healing doesn't begin by forcing yourself to feel. It begins with small, gentle questions like, what part of me is tired? Or what do I need right now? Your emotions aren't gone forever. They're just waiting for the moment you feel safe enough to let them come back. Slowly, quietly, in their own time. A lot of us think numbness just happens. One day we wake up and realize we're not feeling things the way we used to. But numbness rarely comes out of nowhere. There are reasons, quiet, slow, often invisible reasons that pile up over months or even years. And when you finally trace them back, you start to understand that your numbness isn't a personal failure. It's a story your mind has been writing in the background while you try to survive everything life kept throwing at you. One of the biggest causes is emotional overload. Not one dramatic moment, but many small ones. The arguments you swallowed, the disappointments you brushed off, the responsibilities you carried alone, the stress you learned to just deal with. Humans aren't built to absorb endless pressure without cracking. So, instead of breaking, your brain protects you by shutting the emotional door. It thinks it's helping, and honestly, in those moments, it probably was. Another reason is something many of us never talk about. Growing up in environments where feelings weren't safe. Maybe you learned early that showing emotion caused conflict, confusion, or silence. Maybe every time you expressed sadness, someone told you to stop overreacting. Maybe happiness was ignored, anger was punished, fear was mocked. When emotions don't have a safe place to land, the mind eventually stops sending them out. You don't lose the ability to feel, you lose the permission. And then there's long-term stress, the kind that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. Jobs, bills, caregiving, routine, burnout, but slowly drains everything inside you. Psychologists call it emotional fatigue, a phase where the mind shuts down emotions to keep you functioning. It's survival mode. You're not feeling less because you're weak, you're feeling less because you've been strong for far too long. Numbness can also come from repeated disappointment. After enough times of hoping and getting hurt, your mind starts saying, let's not feel too much just in case. It's a quiet defense mechanism. You stop expecting joy because joy hasn't kept its promises. You stop expecting connection because connection hasn't always been safe. You stop expecting relief because every time you got your hopes up, life asked for more than you could give. And then there's trauma, not always dramatic trauma, but the subtle kinds too. Emotional neglect, unpredictable households, being the strong one, learning to be okay even when you weren't. Trauma doesn't always scream, sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it teaches you that emotions make life harder, so numbness becomes the easier path. You don't choose it consciously, it becomes a learned reflex, one that once protected you, but now keeps you disconnected. But understanding these reasons isn't about blaming the past. It's about recognizing that nothing is wrong with you. Your mind didn't shut down because it's broken. It shut down because it was trying to protect you, and that means something important. What has been learned can be unlearned. What has been shut down can slowly open again, not by force, not overnight, but gently, when you finally feel safe enough to feel again. Sometimes emotional numbness doesn't show up like a big dramatic event. It creeps in quietly, almost politely, like a guest who never announces their arrival. One day you're feeling everything normally, and the next you're just flat. Not broken, not okay, just here. And the strangest part? You don't even realize it's happening until someone else points it out. That's how emotional numbness becomes a lifestyle, not because we want it, but because life slowly pushes us into it. There's a moment most people with long-term numbness can remember, a point where life felt too heavy, too chaotic, too demanding. Instead of collapsing, your mind simply said, "All right, let's switch to survival mode." And survival mode doesn't care about joy or excitement or hope. It only cares about keeping you functioning. Psychologists call this emotional blunting. And research from the Journal of Affective Disorders found that prolonged stress can literally reduce the brain's emotional responses, not because you're cold, but because your brain is protecting you. When numbness becomes a habit, it changes the way you move through the world. You stop expecting joy because joy feels unreliable. You stop chasing connection because connection feels risky. You start living on autopilot because autopilot feels safe. It's not that life becomes empty, it becomes muted, like someone turned down the volume on everything inside you, and you never learned how to turn it back up. And slowly, without you noticing, numbness becomes your new normal. You laugh at the right moments because you're supposed to. You say, "I'm fine," because it's easier than explaining an emptiness you don't even fully understand. You stay busy because stillness feels dangerous. You overthink because silence feels too loud. And you tell yourself, "Maybe this is just how I am now." But deep down, you know that isn't the truth. This version of you didn't appear out of nowhere. It's the result of years of carrying too much with nowhere to put it. What makes numbness confusing is that it doesn't always feel bad. Sometimes it feels peaceful, predictable, comfortable even. No big highs, but also no painful lows. It's a quiet place to hide when life feels too sharp. But the comfort is temporary, because after a while, the quiet becomes heavy. The lack of emotion becomes its own kind of ache. And even though you don't feel sadness, you start missing the feeling of feeling. Here's the part most people never talk about. Numbness can make you feel like a ghost in your own life. You're physically present, but emotionally distant. You're doing everything right on the outside, but something inside you stays locked. And the longer you live that way, the harder it becomes to remember what it felt like to be fully alive, to care deeply, to want something, to feel joy without needing to force it. But numbness doesn't mean you're gone. It means a part of you is waiting, waiting for safety, waiting for rest, waiting for a moment where your mind can finally believe it's okay to feel again. And healing begins slowly, the moment you stop blaming yourself for going numb and start understanding why your mind needed to. There's a part of emotional numbness people rarely talk about, the fear of getting your feelings back. It sounds strange at first. You'd think the moment emotions return, it would feel like relief. But for many of us, the idea of feeling again is terrifying. Not because we don't want joy or excitement or love, but because we know that emotions don't come back one at a time. They come back in waves. They come with memories, with truths we tried to outrun, with wounds we weren't ready to look at. And the mind knows this. That's why it keeps the emotional door half closed, even when we're begging for it to open. If you've ever found yourself avoiding moments that could make you feel something, even if it's something good, you're not alone. Some of us avoid connection because connection means vulnerability. Some avoid change because change means uncertainty. Some avoid stillness because stillness makes the emotions too loud. It's not that we don't want a better life. It's that feeling again feels like stepping into a room where we left too many unfinished conversations with ourselves. And pretending not to feel anything is easier than reopening them. Psychologists have actually found that emotional numbness, especially after long-term stress, often comes hand in hand with anticipatory fear. The fear of what will happen when emotions finally return, One study published in Clinical Psychology Review showed that people who experience emotional blunting often carry a hidden fear that resurfacing emotions will be overwhelming or uncontrollable. So the mind protects you the only way it knows how, by staying quiet, not because you're weak, but because your brain thinks it's keeping you safe. And sometimes the fear doesn't look dramatic. It looks like you avoiding deep conversations. It looks like brushing off compliments. It looks like not letting anyone get too close. It looks like choosing distractions over silence. It looks like telling yourself, I'm just tired, even though the truth is more complicated. Fear of feeling can hide behind routines, responsibilities, humor, or even independence, but you can usually sense it in the moments where you feel yourself pulling away for no clear reason. Here's something important. The fear you feel is not a barrier, it's a sign. A sign that emotions are still there, a sign that you haven't lost the ability to feel. You've just been holding the door shut because you thought everything behind it would crash on top of you. But emotions don't come back to destroy you. They come back because your mind is slowly deciding you're strong enough now to handle them. Healing doesn't happen when everything feels safe. It happens when your inner world starts believing you can survive what you feel. And the truth is, emotions rarely return the way we fear. They don't usually burst in like a storm. They slip in through small things. A song, a conversation, a familiar smell, a quiet moment. At first, it feels almost uncomfortable, like stretching muscles you haven't used in years, but slowly, it becomes grounding. Emotion isn't the threat. Emotion is the bridge back to yourself. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to rush your healing. You don't have to push the door open all at once. You can let your feelings return in tiny, safe steps. Feelings aren't here to punish you. They're here to reconnect you. And the moment you stop fearing their return is the moment numbness starts losing its power over your life. There's this weird phase nobody really talks about. The phase when your numbness doesn't fully disappear, but it also doesn't feel as heavy as before. It's not a big aha moment. It's small, quiet. Maybe you laugh at something and realize it wasn't forced. Maybe a song makes your chest feel warm for the first time in months. Maybe you notice sunlight in a way you haven't in a long time, and you think, wait, was that a feeling? It's confusing, because part of you wants to lean into it, and another part is scared that if you feel again, the hurt will come back too. But even with that fear, something in you starts waking up. What nobody tells you is that coming out of numbness is not about trying harder to feel. You can't guilt yourself back into emotions. You can't force your heart to restart. What actually happens is simpler. Your mind stops bracing for impact. It stops expecting the next hit. It starts believing that maybe, just maybe, things are safe enough for emotions to show up again. There's even research in Frontiers in Psychology saying that emotional numbness starts to lift when people experience consistent safety and moments of real connection. Not deep therapy sessions, not huge breakthroughs, just small, steady signs of, I'm okay. And that's why the tiniest things matter more than you think. A quiet morning where your brain isn't in survival mode, a normal conversation that doesn't feel like work, a moment where you breathe a little deeper without realizing it. These are the cracks where light slips in. Feelings don't come back like a flood. They come back like a slow sunrise, soft, blurry, patient. You won't see it happening, but one day you'll realize the sky isn't dark anymore. But here's the awkward part. When emotions start returning, they can feel strange, even uncomfortable. Happiness might feel suspicious, like you're waiting for it to disappear. Sadness might hit harder because you haven't felt it in a while. Even excitement can feel overwhelming. You're not being dramatic. You're relearning something your mind shut off for a long time. It's like using a muscle that's been still for years. It's shaky at first, but it gets stronger. And yes, there will be days you slip back into numbness, days where everything feels flat again. That doesn't mean you ruined your progress. It doesn't mean you're broken all over again. Healing just doesn't move in straight lines. It loops, it circles, it tries again tomorrow. Numbness coming back doesn't erase the days when you did feel something. It just means your mind is still figuring out how to trust life again. This part of healing requires something most of us aren't used to giving ourselves: gentleness. Not motivation, not fixing yourself, just being softer with your own pace. You don't heal numbness by fighting it. You heal by showing your mind over and over, you're safe now, you can rest, you can feel again. It's slow work, but it's real work, the kind that lasts. And maybe, in a strange way, numbness was your mind protecting the deepest parts of you. It didn't shut down to punish you, it shut down to hold you together. Now, as emotions return, you're not going back to who you were before. You're becoming someone stronger, someone who can feel without losing themselves, someone who understands that emotions aren't enemies, they're signals. Slowly you begin noticing things, a little spark of interest, a moment of warmth, a tiny bit of peace. You realize you're not as empty as you thought. You're just tired from carrying too much for too long. And now, piece by piece, your heart is learning to breathe again. Not perfectly, not all at once, but enough to know you're coming back to yourself. And that's healing, not the return of emotion, but the return of you. When you feel nothing, it's easy to believe you've lost a part of yourself. But numbness isn't the end. It's a pause. A quiet place your mind built so you could survive. If this video helped you understand even a small piece of your own story, stay with us. There's more to learn, more to heal, and more of yourself to come home to. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, and let's keep growing together.